This is Terry Mitchell introducing this week's Talking News on Saturday, September the 10th. Following the news of the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, on behalf of the charity, I would like to send our heartfelt condolences to her family at this sad time. Due to the announcement, we have decided to cancel the exhibitors at tomorrow's open day, but will still have a Sight for White presence in the hall between 11 and 3 p.m. Everyone is still welcome to come along for information and refreshments if you so wish.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Liz Truss revealed as new Prime Minister, crucial announcements expected from Thursday. Liz Truss has been revealed as the country's next Prime Minister, with talks that she will announce tax cuts and a £100 billion package to tackle the cost of living within a matter of days. In the coming days, Truss is expected to reveal a wide range of measures to help with the energy and cost of living crises, which could include freezing the wholesale cost of gas produced in Britain in a bid to drive down bills. Liz says she has a bold plan to see Britain through these difficult times. Both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss will fly to Balmoral tomorrow, which of course was a few days ago now, for separate audiences with Her Majesty the Queen, after which Liz will take over from Johnson to become the fourth Conservative PM in just 6 years. Liz beat fellow candidate Rishi Sunak by 20,927 votes, receiving 81,326 versus Rishi's 60,399. She received 57.3% of the vote, which saw an 82.6% turnout. The new look cabinet will be announced either on Tuesday or Wednesday, followed by major announcements on taxes and rescue packages on Thursday. So, perhaps by the end of the week, islanders will have a clearer idea of how the autumn and winter months will play out. 47-year-old Liz, real name Mary Elizabeth Truss, was elected as a Member of Parliament for South West Norfolk in 2010. Since then, she has risen up through the Conservative Party to become Foreign Secretary and now the most powerful woman in the country as the 56th Prime Minister. It was at the start of August that Liz paid a visit to the Isle of Wight with hopes of securing votes from local Tory members.
This is Patrina reading from Island Echo. 120 miles per hour tornado rips roof from building and causes other damage in Yaverland. A tornado that formed over the East Wight on Tuesday afternoon ripped the roof from a derelict building and caused other damage at Sandown Bay Holiday Centre in Yaverland, leaving behind a trail of debris. As first reported by Island Echo, a tornado was spotted between Brading and Bembridge shortly before 1300. The moment the funnel developed and extended towards the ground, increasing in size and picking up speed, was captured on camera. Many commentated, saying that it was simply a funnel cloud, and that theory has to be put to bed with the tornado being confirmed as touching down at Yaverland between Sandown and Bembridge. Large sections of timber, general building materials, bricks and stones have been flung around 30 metres across an open section of grass at Sandown Bay Holiday Centre, with debris smashing into a patio window, causing it to shatter. A piece of garden furniture has also been smashed to pieces by the tornado, which is thought to have brought winds of around 120 miles per hour, moving across the island at 30 mpm. Local weather expert Jamie Russell from Isle of Wight Met Service visited the scene with Island Echo, piecing together the likely movements of the tornado. Jamie explained that the tornado touched down briefly before breaking up as it moved over high land, with the potential for there having been 2 tornadoes. A classic sign is the narrow path of the debris. The initial formation was captured on a time-lapse camera in Lake.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Chief Constable Olivia Pinkney to stand down from the Hampshire Constabulary in April. Chief Constable Olivia Pinkney has announced that she will leave Hampshire Constabulary in April 2023 after some 31 years of policing. She made the decision to leave back in June and has confirmed she will not be taking up another role within policing. Chief Constable Pinkney began her policing career with Avon and Somerset Constabulary and later served as Assistant Chief Constable for the Surrey and Sussex forces before being appointed Deputy Chief Constable at Sussex. In 2013, she was appointed Assistant Inspector of Constabulary with Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, HMI CFRS, independently reporting on the effectiveness and efficiency of all police forces in England and Wales. She joined Hampshire Constabulary as Chief Constable in April 2016 and was awarded the Queen's Police Medal in the New Year Honours List the same year. This week's announcement enables Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones to get on with recruiting a new Chief Constable. This process will start immediately with the aim of making the decision on who will be the new Chief by the end of November. From Monday, Chief Constable Pinkney will be seconded to lead the National Strategic Command Course until mid-December 2022. During which time Deputy Chief Constable Ben Snuggs will take up the role as Acting Chief Constable. Pinkney will then return to Hampshire to oversee the final part of the officer uplift and to ensure an effective handover. Commenting on her departure next year, Chief Constable Pinkney has said, "It is far from the end of my time in force yet, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank the public for their ongoing support of policing, to thank those organisations who continue to forge ever stronger local partnerships with policing, and to thank every single member of the Hampshire Police family for what you continue to do for us all. I made the decision back in late June, and I am announcing it now to help with a smooth transition and handover." Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones, who is leading the recruitment process for the new Chief Constable, has said, "It has been an absolute pleasure working with Olivia. We have become a formidable team, and we will continue to work closely until her last day." Knowing this news at this early point enables time for a well-planned transition and handover period. As your Police and Crime Commissioner, I have a responsibility to find the best chief for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight residents. There is, of course, competition between forces for the best chiefs, so I am casting the net wide to make sure that I can choose from the best candidates within Hampshire and the Isle of Wight and beyond.
This is Alison, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio entitled Ryde Cuts Back on Christmas Decorations. Ryde may not be so merry and bright this Christmas after decorations in the town have been pared back. A decision was made by Ryde Town Council to cut back on the lights and Christmas trees it usually provides around the town. The reduction has been put down to issues with the location of Christmas trees and the poor condition of some of the lighting fixtures. The Town Council had spent £39,000 on star lighting that was in place for 2 seasons. But according to the clerk, Lisa Dyer, most had failed, were unusable and needed replacing. Ms. Dyer said it was a huge cost for the council as virtually all of the equipment needed replacing, and the Facilities and Assets Subcommittee had decided not to buy more, especially so soon after the council bought the last load. The committee would instead investigate the use of ex-hire stock to provide some lighting in the town, and allow time for other ideas such as floodlighting St Thomas's Church and concentrating lighting on Union Street and Cross Street. In previous years, trees at St Thomas's Square and Town Square had been vandalised, with baubles removed and smashed. It was agreed instead that certain areas of the town, such as the square by the Co-op, would be improved with lighting and features to provide photo opportunities. A walk around the town took place last month to discuss all options, which are still being investigated. A working group has also been set up to explore new ways of delivering festive lighting and will report back to the council with its recommendations.
This is Patrina reading from Island Echo. Bottom of the class. Isle of Wight has worst exam results in England. An analysis of new data from Ofqual has revealed that the Isle of Wight recorded the worst examination results of any English county in 2022 in both GCSE and A-levels. The results were so poor that the Isle of Wight shows up in its own unique, very pale blue colour in interactive maps comparing the examination results of English counties on the Ofqual website. In 2022, 65.8% of Ireland's students aged 16 achieved grade 4 and above in all the GCSE examinations they took. This is over 10% below the national average of 76.3%. In the next worst county, Merseyside, 71.3% of the students managed at least a grade 4 in their GCSEs. In individual subjects, 68.7% of 16-year-old Ireland students achieved grade 4 and above in maths, compared with 75.2% nationwide. 72.6% of Isle of Wight youngsters managed grade 4 and above in English, with 77.2% of students achieving this grade in England as a whole. The A-level results were equally dire. 71.2% of A-level students aged 18 achieved a grade of C and above in the Isle of Wight, compared with 82.7% in England as a whole. In the next worst county, Bedfordshire, 75.8% managed at least a C grade. Looking at individual subjects, only 70.1% of our 18-year-olds were awarded grade C and above in history, a full 17% below the national average of 87.8%. Just 61.4% of Ireland sixth formers received C and above in chemistry, the worst in the country. Below the next worst county, Bedfordshire, where 63.4% of their youngsters achieved a C or above. In 2013, Isle of Wight educational outcomes were so bad that the government ordered Hampshire county officers to take over the leadership of Island education. The officers pledged that GCSE exam results would be at the national average by 2016 to 5 years ago. Almost 10 years on, the target of reaching the national average is still far from being met.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Cat missing from the Isle of Wight for 7 weeks, found 60 miles away in Surrey. A beautiful grey tabby cat that was found wandering around the corridors of a school in Godalming in Surrey is being reunited with its owner on the Isle of Wight after being missing for 7 weeks. It was on Monday that the adventurous pet was spotted at Broadwater School, attracting the attention of pupils, parents and teachers. The cat was taken to Farncombe Veterinary Practice, where he was scanned for a microchip. To the vet's surprise, the chip came back to an address here on the island, some 60 miles and a boat journey away. It has been revealed that the cat had been missing for the past 7 weeks, but is now being reunited with its relieved owner. Commenters have been trying to figure out how the animal made it from the Isle of Wight to Surrey, with some surmising that perhaps it snuck on summer holiday.
This is Alison reading an article from the Isle of Wight Radio entitled Improvements Sought for Inaccessible Ryde Beaches. Complaints beaches in Ryde were inaccessible for people with mobility issues over the summer have led to a major bid for accessibility improvements. Proposals to make a stretch of Ryde Beach accessible to wheelchair users and people who struggle with mobility were seen at the Ryde Town Council meeting on Monday. Following consultation with Isle Access and Unlimited Island, the Town Council is proposing key improvements including the installation of a non-slip polyester mat, creating a route on the sand towards the sea, beach and water wheelchairs and beach walkers people would be able to hire, 2 accessible beach huts, wheelchair-friendly picnic tables, raised sunbeds. Further consultation with the Isle of Wight Council is needed, the Town Council says, to determine the exact location of the accessible stretch of beach. To fund the improvements, Ryde Town Council has applied for £10,000 from a South Western Railway fund, which promotes accessibility and inclusion projects. The Town Council said the railway company favours applications which have matched funding, so agreed at its meeting on Monday to either match the £10,000 or 30% of the total cost. If the latter is chosen, the Town Council said it would look for other partners to fund the project. Mayor Michael Lilly said accessibility to beaches was something the council had wanted to achieve for a long time, so the potential grant funding would help to do that. Sandown Town Council, in partnership with the Isle of Wight Council and the Sandown Beach Lifeguards, has recently launched all-terrain wheelchairs. The wheelchairs can be borrowed for a £20 refundable deposit and help people with mobility issues reach the sand and sea. There are plans to expand the scheme next year.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Restrict second home ownership, says Scrutiny Committee ahead of Council vote on planning strategy. Restrict second home ownership, remove housing sites in Bembridge and Freshwater, and renew emphasis on brownfield, not greenfield development. These are some of the changes the Isle of Wight Council's scrutiny body would like made to the island's planning blueprint. The draft island planning strategy is coming before councillors for approval later this month, a year after it was first tabled. The plan, once approved, will include policies developers have to abide by and earmark priority housing sites. The current strategy the Isle of Wight Council uses is out of date and means the authority is penalised by the tilted balance, which favours development unless there is something majorly wrong. Some final changes to the planning strategy have been suggested by the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, however. It believes the Cabinet should adopt them before the new strategy goes to full council for approval. These include ensuring sustainable development is on brownfield sites in areas where it is most needed by increasing the number of houses expected to be built in Newport, at Camp Hill, Newport Harbour, and a new site, Newport Riverside, which is publicly owned land incorporating County Hall, the police station, and the currently empty area at the bottom of Pyle Street. Protecting the environment by only developing greenfields if it is absolutely necessary, removing housing sites in Bembridge and Freshwater, as the Scrutiny Committee argues, there is no local need. Restricting second home and short-term let ownership of new build properties. It is understood that should the amendments be refused, Conservative councillors at County Hall would vote against the island planning strategy, potentially blocking its adoption and delaying the process longer. The need to adopt the planning strategy has been highlighted by multiple councillors as well as the Local Government Association, that's LGA, in a recent peer review. The LGA said the authority needed to urgently finalise and adopt the strategy because without one it was possible developments could happen that are deemed not in the best public interest and outside the needs of local people. However, reacting to the comments, Councillor Joe Robertson, Conservative Group Leader, said he rejected the suggestions councillors should back any plan for the sake of having one, especially now the amendments have created something wholly more beneficial to islanders on the housing waiting list and for the environment. Councillor Robertson said he was pleased with what the Cross-Party Corporate Scrutiny Committee has presented, which provides a greener plan and with more genuinely affordable housing opportunities for islanders who need them most. He said, "I am confident the CSC will back the amendments and I cannot see any good reason for Cabinet to reject them. If Cabinet does, I will be making the argument to all councillors that full council should reject a poorer plan when a better draft exists. If the matter has to be returned to Cabinet to look again, then so be it."
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. Producer Dominic Minghella recalls childhood memories in Ryde and shares hopes for the town's high street. Award-winning producer and screenwriter Dominic Minghella has a deep affection for his hometown of Ryde and has recently shared his ideas of the hopes he has for the town's high street. In a blog post he has created exclusively for the High Street's Heritage Action Zone website, Minghella shares fond childhood memories and his hopes for how the High Street can thrive in the future. No stranger to blogging, the creator of the popular ITV show Doc Martin, which returns to our screens on the 7th of September, reveals charming details about growing up as part of the famous Minghella family. The youngest of 5 children, Dominic's parents, Edward and Gloria, were on the council, serving on committees, supporting charities, and running a very active business on the High Street. His brother Anthony was the Oscar-winning film director who made his name with films such as The English Patient and The Talented Mr. Ripple. On his blog on the Ryde Heritage Action Zone website, Dominic said, "I had a very particular childhood growing up in Ryde and became independent from a very early age because my parents were so busy. I was left to my own devices with so much freedom to do what I wanted. That was the advantage of being part of a tightly knit community. As a child, I thought it was great because if I needed anything, I could just go to the shops. We had an account to get what I needed. If my mum was too busy, I'd take myself off to the shops where I could get my school uniform and buy my own trousers. Looking at the plans to breathe new life into the High Street in Ryde, Dominic said, "Looking to the future of the High Street in Ryde and what can be done to bring people there, I think about what I've noticed on my travels around the world. When you have a defined centre or square, people will gravitate towards it. Everything flows where there is a nice place to sit. There are good restaurants, bars and coffee shops to visit."
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Is there a hoax caller putting lives in danger? Coast Guard says no despite nothing found. Searches and rescue volunteers once again put their lives at risk and launched into the darkness in response to a Mayday call off the Isle of Wight on Monday night. But for the fourth time this year alone, nothing was found. Was it a hoax? For several months, Island Echo has been investigating a series of incidents which appear to be suspicious in nature. Each instance costing the taxpayer thousands of pounds and putting the lives of volunteers and paid Coast Guards at risk. Despite numerous call-outs resulting in no wreckage or persons ever being located and rumours of a hoaxer circulating, HM Coast Guards says it does not believe there is a hoax caller at work. Since 2019, there have been a total of 9 incidents, which we know of, that appear to be suspicious in nature, many of them sharing the same modus operandi, MO. In 2022, so far there have been 4 such incidents. On the 20th of February, in stormy conditions, a pan call was picked up in the South Wight area. This led to 2 lifeboats from Bembridge and Yarmouth being launched to search between St Catherine's and Blackgang, with Ventnor Coast Guard rescue team also deployed. Nothing was found, neither at the time nor in the days following the emergency alert. Then on the 23rd of March, lifeboats from Yarmouth and Swanage, plus Coast Guard Rescue 175 helicopter, were involved in a search between Poole Bay and the Needles following a Mayday broadcast. Nothing was found. Just 2 months later, on the 25th of May, a Mayday call was picked up in the Solent area, reporting that a vessel was taking on water and sinking. The sea conditions were choppy. This resulted in 3 lifeboats, Bembridge, Portsmouth and Gosport, and the Coast Guard helicopter being scrambled. Again, nothing was found. Bembridge and Selsey RNLI lifeboats were launched when a Mayday call was received reporting that a yacht with 2 persons on board was in difficulty off St Catherine's Point. A search was conducted, but after more than 3 hours, nothing was found. The incident saw Coast Guard Rescue 163 from Lydd in Kent scrambled. It has been confirmed that there have been no further reports of distress, traffic or wreckage. Other incidents in recent times include 14th of June 2021, call for help via radio transmission, Sundown Lifeboat and Ventnor and Needles Coast Guard rescue teams. Nothing found. 30th of June 2020, pan call off the East Wight in F5 conditions, Bembridge Lifeboat, Rescue 175, Royal Navy and 2 Coast Guard rescue teams. Nothing found. 14th of April 2020, Mayday picked up in the West Wight area. Coast Guard Rescue 175 scrambled. Nothing found. 13th of January 2020, Mayday call near Wootton. Kells RNLI lifeboat and Benbridge Coast Guard rescue team. Nothing found. 16th of June 2019. Mayday alert near Island Harbour. Kells lifeboat and 2 Coast Guard rescue teams. Nothing found. Thought to be a hoax. A Marine and Coast Guard agency spokesperson told Island Echo back in May, "We have received no information to suggest any of the incidents highlighted are hoax calls, and we do not believe there is a hoax caller at work. We never put a price on human life. If we get a call for help, whatever the method, we treat it as real. We encourage people to call us if they see someone in trouble or think they may be in trouble, even if they're not sure whether they are or not. Contacting HM Coast Guards in these cases is always the right thing to do. Search and rescue resources will always be used rather than risk loss of life. If we think someone's in danger or in trouble, we will always search for them and rescue them if needed." Earlier this year, Island Echo asked HM Coast Guard to release the Mayday recordings for the above-mentioned incidents, as well as details of the cost and manpower associated with each incident. The information has not been supplied.
This is Alison reading an article from the Island Echo entitled First Prime Minister of New Zealand, Henry Sewell, was born in Newport in 1807. On this day in 1807, Henry Sewell, the first ever Prime Minister of New Zealand, was born in Newport. Henry Sewell was the 4th son of Thomas Sewell, a solicitor, and his wife Jane. He was educated at Hyde Abbey School near Winchester, and he himself qualified as a solicitor, joining his father's firm in 1826. He went on to marry Lucinda Needham, with whom he had 6 children, before Lucinda died in 1844 at the age of just 31. Lucinda is buried in Carisbrooke. Sewell remarried Elizabeth Kitto in 1850 and made plans to emigrate with his new wife to New Zealand, hoping for a better life in the colony. The married couple arrived in New Zealand on the 2nd of February 1853. In July of that year, Henry decided that he would stand for the New Zealand Parliament in the general election and was duly elected. On the 7th of May 1856, Henry Sewell was appointed as the first Prime Minister of New Zealand. However, his government lasted for less than 2 weeks, and he was forced out of office on the 20th of May. Sewell continued to play a role in the government of New Zealand when fighting broke out with Maori in 1860 over land grievances. Sewell, who held pacifist views, attempted to promote negotiation and compromise. He believed that conflict with the Maori could only be resolved by a fair method of land purchase, which did not involve coercion. Sewell later resigned from post as Attorney General over the government's land confiscation policies. In 1873, Sewell retired from politics and returned to England. He died in Cambridge on the 14th of May 1879 and is buried in the old churchyard, Wearsley, Huntingdonshire.
Before we start the second part of the Talking News, here is this week's Society's News, which today is read by myself, Morris, and
by Kate.
Our members' activities have now restarted, so on a Monday we have our Medina swimming session. Please note the new time of 1:15 to 2:15. The cost is £5 and we have exclusive use of the pool.
Coffee and chat at Millbrook House is on every Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 11:30. The cost is £1 for refreshments. This is a good opportunity to catch up with other members, and also if you have any enquiries, members of our staff are on hand to assist. This is open to everyone, not just members, so please feel free to bring along partners, friends or neighbours.
Starting on Tuesday the 20th of September at Millbrook House is yoga. This will be a weekly activity depending on numbers and interest. To start with, it will be chair yoga, but move to mat and floor yoga depending on members' abilities. Please call the office for more details. It will start at 2 p.m. and finish at 3 p.m.
If any member is interested in having a go on a tandem, please call Susan in the office. We have a lovely gentleman who is willing to take members on either a 1 hour, 2 hour or even 3 hour tandem bike ride, and therefore looking for members who fancy trying this activity out.
We have a pudding and quiz night on the 23rd of September at Millbrook House, starting at 7 p.m. Teams of 4 people, and the price is £5 per person to include the quiz and delicious puddings. Please call the office as we can only have a maximum of 9 teams, so it's first come, first served.
Last weekend we had a stall at the annual Wolverton show, and we are very grateful to all our volunteers who manned the stall over the 2 days. We are pleased to announce we raised over £400, which is a fantastic amount, and thank you to everyone who came along and said hello.
And finally, owing to the Royal Mail dispute, no envelopes were returned to Millbrook House last week. It highlighted the fact that the majority of you have both envelopes in circulation. Please, as soon as you have finished with the talking news, post your memory sticks back to Millbrook House. In the meantime, please search at home for any unreturned wallets and also post them back as soon as possible. During the dispute, we will do our utmost to send out the talking news, but remember, it is available on both Alexa speakers and the Society's website. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The woman who was never meant to be queen but became the nation's longest serving monarch died peacefully at the age of 96 yesterday afternoon after 70 years and 7 months at the helm of the nation. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was the eldest daughter of the Duke and Duchess of York. Her father acceded to the throne as King George VI in 1936, only because his brother King Edward VIII abdicated, making Elizabeth the heir presumptive. When her father died in February 1952, Elizabeth, then 25 years old, became Queen of the UK and 6 other nations: Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan and Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, and head of the Commonwealth. She had already made clear that she understood the enormity of the role before her when, as Princess Elizabeth, she broadcast a moving message from Cape Town on her 21st birthday, in which she promised to serve her people for her entire life, a promise that she faithfully kept. Her husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, the man she described as my strength and stay, was beside her for 7 decades until he died shortly before his 100th birthday in April last year. The Queen's reign covered 15 Prime Ministers, the last one, Liz Truss, appointed only on Tuesday. It was to be her final public duty. A virtual Privy Council meeting due to the following day was cancelled after she was advised by doctors to rest. The promise that Princess Elizabeth made on her 21st birthday. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family, to which we all belong. But I shall not have the strength to carry out this resolution alone, unless you join in it with me, as I now invite you to do. I know that your support will be unfailingly given. God help me to make good my vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share in it.
A Sandown man stole £600 of sports clothing. A dangerous driver already facing a possible jail term for drink driving has also admitted stealing almost £600 worth of goods from a sports shop and being caught with heroin. Daniel Kilshaw of Fort Street, Sandown, admitted shoplifting from Sports Direct in Newport and possessing the Class A drug on June the 10th when he appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court this Tuesday. Currently in custody at HMP Isle of Wight, Kilshaw stole clothing worth £597.92. The 41-year-old is to appear before an Isle of Wight Crown Court judge on September the 27th, after he admitted, at an earlier hearing before magistrates, aggravated vehicle taking and driving the stolen vehicle to Betsworth Road Ryde, where he crashed it into a wall, together with dangerous driving, drink driving and driving without a licence and insurance. Kilshaw will remain in custody until his next hearing.
The world's last seagoing paddle steamer returned to the Isle of Wight last week for the first time in 4 years to offer locals and visitors a variety of cruises. Trips on the Waverley can be picked up from Yarmouth, and other stops include Southampton, Portsmouth, Poole and Swanage this September. Waverley set sail on Friday from Southampton for a cruise to the famous Needles Rocks and Lighthouse at the westerly tip of the island. Tickets were sold out. Some of the County Press team were on board. See countypress.co.uk for photos, videos and our Facebook Live. While aboard the famous vessel, passengers have the unique opportunity to fully view the triple expansion steam engine as it drives the ship's massive paddle wheels. There's also plenty of opportunity to treat yourself while on board, enjoying facilities including a restaurant, tea bar and traditional period lounges. Plentiful windows in the lounges allow fabulous views of the coastline, while the main deck has open-air seating all around. The sound of paddle beats on the south coast and Thames dates back to the 19th century, when numerous steamers plied their trade. Waverley's general manager Paul Semple said, "With the beat of her paddles and the sound of her whistle and the aroma of hot oil in her engine room, Waverley comes alive as she takes passengers on a nostalgic journey, one though which is now threatened due to rising costs." Sailing Waverley from her home waters on the Firth of Clyde to the south coast has cost us over £50,000, so it is vital we see continued support for the ship if she is to remain in operation. This season, we are facing an 80% increase in fuel costs. Waverley currently costs around £12 per minute on fuel alone. It is costing the charity which owns the ship a staggering £8,000 per day to steam Waverley, and therefore I truly hope many will support us by coming for a wonderful cruise. Trips take place over the next couple of weeks. Saturday's trip was cut short due to a technical issue, and those hoping to sail from Yarmouth were left disappointed.
The island's very first fire cadet unit has launched at Sandown Fire Station, and new cadets and community volunteers can sign up now. Run by the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, the programme gives those aged between 13 and 17 the chance to gain essential social, life and wellbeing skills, including a BTEC Level 2 qualification. Fire Cadets is perfect for young people looking to have fun while taking on challenges to reach their full potential, said a spokesman for the fire service. Whether it's taking part in firefighting drills and first aid training or using real firefighting equipment, from the moment they put on their cadet uniforms, they become part of the fire service family. As well as having the chance to make new friends, learn teamwork skills and improve health, fitness and well-being, the cadets also practice interview skills to help them with future applications and CVs. The fire service is also looking to recruit volunteer fire cadet instructors from the community. Fire Cadet Manager Melanie Walker O'Hare said, "To make the Sandown Fire Cadets a success, we are looking for enthusiastic volunteers who want to make a difference in their community, to offer their time, commitment and support. If you want to become a role model for young people and help them to achieve their full potential, we'd love to hear from you." Sandown Fire Cadets will meet on Mondays during school term time from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. So contact the Hampshire Fire Service at the Sundown Station to find out more. Full training and uniform will be provided for instructors.
An application to hold events near Ryde Marina all year round has been withdrawn following residents' concerns. Ryde Town Council wanted a premises licence allowing them to play films and live and recorded music and to hold dance performances Monday to Sunday 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. at Eastern Gardens, covering every day of the year. The application had been met with concern by some residents, however, who feared it could lead to an increase in noisy events. They said it would allow events to take place every day of the year until late at night, causing continued disturbances. Objections had since been submitted to the Isle of Wight Council, residents said. The Town Council had, however, tried to allay uneasiness around the application that Eastern Gardens could become a 24/7, 365-day party venue, saying that was not the case. The Town Council said the licence would allow them to control which events took place and believed there were enough late-night music events already happening, so did not want to add more. Taking to social media, it said, "If you are hoping for a local, responsible, inclusive and properly managed approach to Eastern Gardens that takes into account local needs and creates a positive image, then you are in luck. However, following a meeting between the Town Council and residents of the Strand, the application has been withdrawn." The Town Council has not yet decided whether it will reapply for the licence. A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight Council said they had been advised most activities planned for Eastern Gardens could go ahead without a premises licence. The Town Council has recently taken on a 125-year lease of Eastern Gardens from the Isle of Wight Council.
The first person on the island convicted of non-fatal strangulation has been sentenced. Joshua Hunt has avoided jail and was given a suspended sentence at the Island Crown Court. The case became Hampshire Constabulary's first conviction of the new offence and was among the first in the country. Non-fatal strangulation became an offence in its own right, separate to assault, on June the 7th. Hunt, 26, of no fixed address, admitted harassment via a breach of a restraining order and intentional strangulation. William Saunders, prosecuting, told the court the victim was in a relationship with Hunt but had a restraining order preventing contact. However, they had spent 4 days together and were at the Isle of Wight festival setting up camp. Mr. Saunders said although the victim was also breaching the terms of the restraining order, quite what the power ratio between the two was, we don't know. Mr. Saunders said Hunt had been telling the victim she was dirty and not worth a pound and got aggressive when wine was spilt on him. The victim went to walk away from the festival site, but at Little London, Hunt grabbed her and squeezed her around the neck. He grabbed her again, and this time put her in a chokehold so she couldn't breathe. Mr. Saunders said the victim thought she was going to die and thought Hunt was going to snap her neck. Members of the public stopped the attack, and one in particular, Anna Ambrose, called 999 and coolly and calmly got the situation under control. Her partner bravely stayed with Hunt to defuse the situation. They were publicly commended for their actions by Judge Advocate Robert Dougal-Hill. Jim Osborne for Hunt said he knew it was a last chance hotel. Judge Hill said Hunt's behaviour was so serious a custodial sentence was inevitable, but he was prepared to take a chance on him by suspending it. Hunt was given an 18-month custodial sentence, suspended for 2 years, but he must attend 20 rehabilitation days and a 6-month alcohol treatment requirement.
A company boss wants to keep his fuel depot open after breaching planning control. Retrospective planning permission is being sought by David Granham, Managing Director of Solent Fuels, for a fuel storage depot at a former commercial abattoir. Following the closure of Isle of Wight Fuels in April 2021, former employee Mr. Granham set up Solent Fuels to keep island households heated and business supplied, rather than see them rely on mainland suppliers. A suitable fuel storage site was found and created at Park Green Farm off Forest Road in Newport. However, the permission for the farm did not cover fuel storage and had been identified by the Isle of Wight Council as a breach of planning control. A planning statement on behalf of Mr Granham by Andrew White Planning Consultancy said the site had permission to be a civil engineering and general builder storage and operations depot. Given the storage nature, Mr White said they were under the genuine impression that the small depot did not require permission. The planning documents say the continuation of the fuel storage depot does not result in any marked increase in adverse impacts on the character of the surrounding rural landscape, the amenities of the nearest residential property, or on the highway network. There are 2 fuel storage tanks that store kerosene, gas oil, white diesel and in the future biofuel. You can view the full plans at 22/01320/FUL on the Council's planning register, and comments can be submitted until September the 30th.
Back to the future with Daniel's steam idea. Could this quirky island invention solve the world's energy crisis? Daniel Roberts, who is curator of the pioneering Isle of Wight Poo Museum, turned his hand to a different but equally innovative project during the COVID lockdown, one which centres on steam-powered electricity. And in so doing, he reckons he may have cracked the world's energy crisis, or at least hopes he has. The revelation came during the first lockdown, when Daniel decided to answer the nagging question in his head: could you make a steam engine which can run at less than boiling point? There's no shortage of energy, we're surrounded by it, but what's really difficult is turning it into electricity, said Daniel. The invention is a steam turbine sealed in a near vacuum. The reason for the vacuum is that water boils at a much lower temperature when pressure is reduced. That means instead of having to burn gas, oil or coal to generate electricity, you can use a source of heat at a much lower temperature to produce steam and drive a turbine to produce the electricity. Instead of heating water to hundreds of degrees Celsius, like conventional power stations do, you instead generate electricity from heat stored between 50 and 90 degrees. Too hot for a bath, but not hot enough for a cup of tea. Renewables, like solar and wind, could be used to generate this heat, which would be stored in large tanks of water or simply in the ground itself. That stored heat could then be used to generate electricity using the low-temperature turbine whenever it is needed. Daniel made his prototype out of odds and ends, and while it works as designed and the principle is sound, a question mark hangs over whether it is a practical solution on a larger scale. He said, perhaps it has been tried and rejected before, but that's not to say it isn't workable now. I'm no trained scientist or engineer, and there was a bit of hubris in my thinking, so why couldn't I just solve the energy crisis? But at the same time, I did feel like I had a bit of a responsibility to at least try it out. He's keen to hear from county press readers. Obviously you can contact him by emailing the Poo Museum.
Following works planned for the Ryde interchange, a £10 million grant-funded upgrade under the Transforming Cities scheme, temporary toilets were installed on Western Gardens whilst toilets were being refurbished and improved in the station building itself. Now a senior councillor is saying that they may have to be removed due to damage caused by vandals who seem intent on destroying the facilities. Councillor Phil Jordan, Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure and Ward Councillor for Ryde North West, where the toilets are situated, said, "We are now seeing constant criminal damage to the toilets, and this is proving costly as well as being a huge inconvenience to residents and visitors alike. Just this past weekend, we have seen extensive damage and serious attempts to set fire to the toilets, which are not only a huge disappointment, but a danger to our community. I am asking the community and businesses of Ryde in Western Gardens to please let us have any information they might have that could lead us to discover who is responsible for this mindless vandalism. My contact details are phil.jordan@isleofwight.gov.uk, and I am happy to receive information in complete confidence if required. If we cannot put a stop to this ongoing vandalism, it is with a very heavy heart and disappointment that we may have to close the toilets and remove them permanently. I hope we can avoid that, but this cannot continue, and the possible outcome will be closure and removal. An internal meeting is planned next week to discuss the options for the toilets and to consider their future.
A woman whose partner died and a subsequent murder investigation was then dropped cited bereavement trauma when she was caught drink driving. Sarah Hubbard, aged 52, was more than 3 times the drink drive limit when she hit a car in Regent Street, Shanklin on July the 29th, and she admitted drink driving at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court. Liz Miller, prosecuting, said a member of the public filmed her driving away from the car after she struck it. They shouted at her, but she put her finger up and drove off. Police later found her at her home at St John's Road, Shanklin, where she gave a breath alcohol reading of 111, where the legal limit is only 35. Barry Arnett for Hubbard said she hadn't realised she hit the car. There were 4 young people standing around it, and she gestured to them because they were laughing at her. Mr Arnett said Hubbard's partner of 6 years was lost in tragic circumstances, where a murder was suspected, but no criminal proceedings went ahead, and she had found him with significant injuries. Mr Arnett said Hubbard doesn't have an inherent drink problem, but the incident arose from what had happened to her partner. Hubbard was given a 12-month community order with 120 hours of unpaid work. She was banned from driving for 2 years with £85 costs and a £114 surcharge.
So I have a headline here that reads, "So exactly what is the Island deal? Questions remain despite new Prime Minister's promise." Island Conservatives heard it straight from the new leader's mouth. Liz Truss will deliver the Island deal her predecessor Boris Johnson didn't get done. The new Prime Minister was asked by Island journalist and podcaster Harriet Hadfield whether she would take on Mr Johnson's still pending Island deal when she visited the Island Riding Centre, Newport, to talk to party members as part of the leadership hustings last month. She said she would honour the promise made by her predecessor but not delivered. But whether that entails a specific pot of cash or a drip feed of specific grants would still appear to be unclear. Asked by the county press for his reaction to Ms Truss's announcement, Island MP Bob Seeley insisted the support did not mean a specific deal. He said, "We agreed that an Island deal should be about getting a better deal for the island over the long term and is not a one-off amount of money." He said this had already delivered an additional £48 million for St Mary's, £26 million to renovate Island Line, £29 million to secure the rebuild of Ryde Pier, and £6 million for shipbuilding infrastructure in East Cowes, and millions more pledged for Isle of Wight College. He said, "In total, working with councillors and others, we have delivered over £100 million of additional capital spending on the island by the government."
Tourists' horror at a glass bottle thrown from a cliff. It could have killed us. 2 holidaymakers have spoken of their horror when youth threw a large spirit bottle over the edge of Lake Cliff and it smashed at their feet. Mrs Hall, aged 54, was out walking with her mother, Mrs Dobinson, of 77, on holiday from Winchester, when the incident happened. Mrs Hall told the county press, "Urgent action must be taken to stop a fatality occurring. Pensioners and families walk along that path, and they may not be as lucky as us to have had a narrow escape. This was such a distressing end to our holiday, and not what we expected from the island. I understand it's a minority, but this has to be stopped. A police officer is needed in this area to control these morons before a life is lost." The holidaymakers were halfway between Shanklin and Lake on a walk from Sandown when a large glass bottle, described as the size of a bottle of spirit, came crashing down just in front of our feet with an almighty bang and smashed. Mrs. Hall said we screamed and held each other as we were both in shock. A very kind lady stopped on her bike as she was cycling to Sandown and said she had seen what had happened and asked if we were okay. We walked on to Shanklin, watching all of the time in case they threw another bottle at us. We warned 3 families and a young lad as they were about to walk along. We then drove around Shanklin trying to find a police officer, but there was none around and the police station was no longer in use. If the bottle had hit one of us, it could have killed us. We are very shaken, disillusioned and upset holidaymakers. They said they wanted to raise awareness to alert others. Mrs. Hall added, "We have holidayed on the island for the last 46 years and never experienced anything like this before."
An Isle of Wight teen has been sentenced for 17 offences, among them knife threats and assaults. The 16-year-old girl, who cannot be identified on account of her age, was handed a 4-month detention and training order. It is a custodial sentence for young people aged 12 to 17. She had admitted a long list of charges when she appeared before the Isle of Wight magistrates via video link. She was charged with 2 counts of threatening a mental health nurse with a knife on July the 21st in Newport. There were also 8 counts of assault by beating, 7 against emergency workers, 6 counts of criminal damage and a single count of theft from a shop. The offence is related to dates between July the 21st and July the 25th. The criminal damage charges included damage caused to Matalan's shop window, a youth service door, and for damaging plant pots and a car at Morrison's supermarket. The remainder were for smashing car windows in Newport. The youth, who has no previous convictions, admitted every offence. Barry Arnett, defending, previously told the court the girl was a very troubled young individual who had been in and out of secure accommodation since she was 13.
Councillor quits committee over scheme. An Isle of Wight councillor has resigned from the planning committee over the controversial major Westacre Park development. It follows the first anniversary of the Isle of Wight Council's decision to approve the 473 house plan on the outskirts of Ryde, although planning permission has not officially been granted yet. The lack of official consent has, however, been cited as one of the reasons Councillor Michael Lilly, former chair of the committee, felt he needed to stand down. Councillor Lilly has been against the plans, increasing the number of houses in his ward since they were announced, and could not attend the crucial meeting where the plans were approved due to his predetermined stance. At the time, despite a written statement from him read out during the meeting, Councillor Lilly said he felt there had been a concerted effort to stop him talking and properly representing his residents. Since that meeting, however, campaigners trying to save Westridge Farm and Councillor Lilly have rallied to create a case for judicial review against the Isle of Wight Council, raising more than £18,000. In his resignation letter, Councillor Lilly said he felt being part of the committee compromised his ability to speak on the application. He said it was untenable to remain when it upholds a decision he and his residents believe is flawed. Planning permission needs to be issued before a judicial review can be launched, and from then campaigners will have 6 weeks to submit the challenge. A report from the Council's former Chief Executive, John Metcalfe, earlier this year said procedural allegations around the application did not raise significant legal issues, and should it reach a judicial review, there is a defence for every point. The application was reconsidered by the Planning Committee earlier this year, after councillors considered there were failings in the original decision. The motion to think again on the application, submitted by Councillor Chris Jarman, was rejected. In his resignation letter, Councillor Lilly alleges, however, some councillors' votes on the motion were linked to the draft island planning strategy the council is trying to push through, because Councillor Lilly has asked for a full investigation. He said, "I feel it is disrespectful to my planning committee colleagues and the planning and legal staff to continue as a committee member if I harbour the above concerns, distrust and doubts."
A popular Ventnor restaurant was evacuated mid-service when a fire broke out in a fuse box on Saturday night. The electrical fire at Smoking Lobster caused smoke which continued to emit throughout the evening. Swift action by the staff ensured no one was hurt and everyone was safely and quickly evacuated from the one-storey seafront building. Multiple fire crews attended the scene and Ventnor Esplanade was cordoned off to traffic for the evening. All diners were treated to a free meal, or what they had of it, and free drinks. A spokesperson from the restaurant told the county press they apologised to their customers for the inconvenience.
A man with an air rifle shot a seagull. An Isle of Wight man who shot and injured a protected bird, which later had to be put down, has appeared in court. Sonny Everlight of Fleetway Shellfleet appeared before the Isle of Wight magistrates last Friday. The 25-year-old admitted a single charge of firing an air rifle beyond premises in Shellfleet on June 30th, 2022, injuring the black-headed gull. Prosecutor Liz Miller told the court that Everlight shot the gull with an air rifle while he was in his garden. She said it was able to fly off, but landed in a neighbour's garden and was found by young children. Miss Miller said the gull suffered extensive damage to its wing and was later euthanised by a vet who conceded nothing could be done to save it. Jim Osborne, defending, said Everlight pleaded guilty on a full facts basis and deeply regretted his actions on the day. He said he had serious mental health difficulties and asked for a pre-sentence report to be drawn up. Everlight was granted unconditional bail and will reappear for sentencing on September the 23rd.
Victim of drink driver commits the same crime. The tables turned on the victim of a drink drive crash of 2 years ago, awarded a 6-figure payout at the time, when his own drunken driving led to a 3.5-year driving ban. Joshua Barnes of Churchview Close, Cowes, admitted failing to provide a specimen for analysis at Newport Police Station on August the 21st. Police officers waiting at traffic lights at Coppins Bridge in Newport spotted Barnes enter the roundabout at speed, wheel spinning his car and almost driving into its island before he headed towards Cowes, said Anne Smout, prosecuting at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court. Police gave chase on the Newport to Cowes Road, with Barnes seen meandering over the white line before he was eventually pulled over. Barnes was argumentative with officers and challenged everything they said, Mrs. Smout said. Barnes told the police he'd drank a spirit a few hours earlier, but that was all, but he stank of alcohol. He provided an alcohol breath reading of 64 micrograms, the legal limit being 35, and was arrested. He lost his job as an Asda delivery driver, a result of the offence, Barnes told the bench. "I have made a promise to myself to never to drink and drive again," Barnes added. Magistrates handed him a year's probation and a 42-month driving ban, with an order to pay a £114 surcharge and £85 costs.
The Isle of Wight has been named as one of the best UK holiday destinations for British travellers by the hotel chain Travelodge. It placed it 9th on the coastal section of the Travelodge ranking, beating Great Yarmouth to 10th spot. The Isle of Wight was joined on the list by locations such as Blackpool, Brighton, Bournemouth, Whitby, Devon and Cornwall. Travelodge's latest travel index revealed the facets behind the holiday plans of many UK holidaymakers, which surveyed 2,000 adults on their holiday plans. On average, Britons have spent £513.13 on their 2022 staycation holiday.
School bosses urge closer reality check. A strategy of cutting pupil numbers rather than closing Isle of Wight primary schools is not effective, says a group of head teachers and governors. In letters submitted to the Isle of Wight Council Education Committee by a group of school bosses, they say the council's no-closure strategy doesn't add up. At the moment, there are too many empty places in primary schools, but the council's cabinet has said no schools will be closed. Council officers have tried to find a solution and approached schools asking them to lower their pupil admission numbers ahead of further decline in pupil numbers. The move has faced backlash from school leaders, with 2 open letters criticising the reduction submitted to the Children's Education Policy and Scrutiny Committee last week, signed by 18 primary school head teachers and the chair of Governors Group. Speaking at the meeting, Maggie Sanderson, Executive Head Teacher of both St Thomas of Canterbury and St Mary's Catholic Primary Schools in Carisbrooke and Ryde, said, "We believe we need to act decisively and effectively in planning primary school places, bringing them in line with the required number. We do not advocate closing all small schools. However, with the increasing financial demands that impact schools of all sizes, we feel a strategic approach is essential. As heads, we approach this discussion with some personal trepidation. We understand the implications. However, we believe the strongest outcomes for island children is working strategically rather than responding individually by reducing PANs." Councillor Tig Outlaw said reading the officer's report had been depressing and thought the PAN reduction suggested was genuinely dreadful. He thanked officers for trying to find a solution, but said Cabinet had tied the officers' hands together. Councillor Outlaw said Cabinet needed to address the reality that some schools would have to close to achieve the right education for the island's children. He told Councillor Debbie Andre, Cabinet Member for Children's Education, he needed her to understand the promises made at an election meant nothing when it came to children's education and doing what is right for them. The Scrutiny Committee, following the advice of Councillor Andre, agreed to take the report to Cabinet, devising options with head teachers and governors.
Illuminated Carnival. Newport Carnival's 100th year celebrations came to an end with its illuminated procession. Floats from across the island came together, along with Ventnor and Freshwater Coast Guards, for the first time ever leading the vehicle section. Tractors from the Isle of Wight Young Farmers Club were also on show, as was Sight for Wight.
An earlier hover on Saturday. Hover Travel has added a 7:45 a.m. departure from Ryde on Saturdays. The Cross Solent operator said it was in response to customers' feedback. The new flight starts on September the 17th and runs through until December the 10th. Loretta Lale, Head of Commercial, said they would review the demand for the extra services on a weekly basis and make a decision whether it can be a permanent addition in December. There is also a new 8 a.m. departure from Southsea.
A regular offender's last chance. A regular offender was told he had still not learned his lesson, but would be given a last chance to turn his life around. Rhys Judge, aged 21, was given a 12-week jail term, but suspended for a year, with the warning from Magistrate Peter Redding to behave in future. Judge of Collard's Close, Freshwater, admitted assault by beating and criminal damage to a taxi on August the 4th, when he appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court. He committed the offences just 2 days after being given a community order. Liz Miller, prosecuting, said Judge had been drinking during Cowes Week when he became verbally abusive and punched a peacemaker in the face. A taxi driver then refused him a fare after witnessing this behaviour, and Judge's response was to kick the passenger door, causing a dent. Michael McGoldrick, for Judge, said his client was embarrassed and ashamed and had let his parents and the court down. He said Judge had suffered with his mental health since a serious assault to his head in 2019 and suffered with ADHD. He said Judge was susceptible to peer pressure and the probation service had concerns he would be vulnerable in jail. He must pay £85 costs, £200 compensation and a £154 surcharge.
A man has been jailed after turning up at his former partner's house with an air pistol and 2 knives. Mark Wise, 66, of Landguard Manor Road, Shanklin, admitted assaulting his former partner by beating on June the 21st, and matters relating to July the 16th, 2 counts of possession of a knife and another of possession of an imitation firearm. He appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court for sentencing recently. Liz Miller, for Wise, said police received a 999 call from the victim, who had opened her door to find Wise there, who then made his way into her home. He was described as in a psychotic and unreasonable mood and was searching for bank cards when he pulled out a black handgun. Ms. Miller said the victim's initial thought was panic and fear. She told police him and guns are not a good combination. Police found the knives in his pocket. Amy Hosel for Wise said he carried the knives for fishing and used the gun to shoot cans in the woods. He had not realised the knives were in his pocket and had no intention to cause any harm. Wise was jailed for 17 weeks and made subject to a 12-month restraining order with an order to pay £154 surcharge.
There's a unique chance to bid on royal rarities. Delicate lace from Queen Victoria's funeral procession, the monarch's voluminous nightdress, Princess Beatrice's bloomers, and a toy box and letters will all be auctioned next month. The undergarments were found by a former island antique shop owner and will be sold by Hanson's auctioneers. Marilyn Rose, aged 90, who ran antique shops in Gurnard and Newport, cannot remember how she ended up with the nightie and bloomers with royal heritage. Her son, Tim Rose, aged 64, from Warwickshire, said, "My mother is moving. We have been clearing the period property. They were among several fascinating finds, some of which are new to us. The house being cleared dates to the 1700s and was once home to Sir William Carter Hofmeister, Queen Victoria's physician while she was at Osborne. A folder of letters has also been found, along with a 19th century toy box that belonged to Princess Beatrice. Queen Victoria's extra-large, pale cream lawn cotton nightdress, edged with Honiton lace and embroidered with VR, Victoria Regina, and a crown, is worth an estimated £1,500 to £2,000. It measures 51 inches. The bloomers, which belonged to Princess Beatrice, the Queen's daughter, who is a former governor of the island and Carisbrooke Castle resident, bears a crown and the initials BB for Beatrice of Battenberg. It means they would have been worn in the years following her 1885 marriage to Henry of Battenberg, and they are valued between £500 and £1,000. In 2008, Hanson sold a Queen Victoria nightdress for £5,200, bloomers for £4,500 and a chemise for £3,800. In 2020, 2 pairs of Queen Victoria's leather boots, a black taffeta skirt and 2 bodices achieved £14,000, and they were bought by the historic royal palaces. The stained pine chest reads Toy Music, HRA's Princess Beatrice, and has an estimate of £400 to £600. The sale also includes a piece of lace bearing a note which reads, "Portion of the pall that covered Queen Victoria's coffin on her last journey from Osborne, Isle of Wight, February the 1st, 1901. It failed to make its estimate at an earlier auction, but is linked to Queen Victoria's death at Osborne House, aged 81, on January the 22nd, 1901, and her subsequent final journey to London via East Cowes. It was discovered in Somerset and has a guide price between £800 and £1,000.
A takeaway chef who crashed her car while 3 times the legal drink limit could have been catastrophic for other road users, an island magistrate told her. Yowawafra Berry of the Trattles Court, Newport, admitted drink driving in Ryde on August the 7th. Police attended a single vehicle accident on Stroudwood Road early that morning. A witness had to take the key away from Berry to stop her driving off, said Anne Smout, prosecuting at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court. Berry provided an alcohol breath reading of 105 micrograms, 3 times the limit. This was her second drink drive conviction, the other being in September 2015. For Berry, Barry Keel said his client came off the road and collided with a hedge after she was blinded by the sun coming up. Mr. Keel said Berry, 57, had been in a toxic relationship and went out drinking the night before with friends to cheer herself up. She couldn't get a taxi home the next morning and unwisely decided to drive, said Mr. Keel. Berry was banned from driving for 44 months and made subject to a year's probation to include 9 months of alcohol treatment. She must pay a £114 surcharge and £85 costs.
And now we go to White Memories. This is a new book sheds light on what could have happened to the Greek ship called Flag Theophano. Diver and shipwreck enthusiast Martin Woodward has written a book on the loss of the Flag Theophano, widely considered to be the Solent's worst modern-day shipping tragedy, in which 19 people died. The book, called The Forgotten Shipwreck, Lost with All Hands. It was officially launched last week and will hopefully keep the story of the Flag Theophano alive in people's memories. Martin said, "I live on the seafront at Bembridge, overlooking where the ship sank 3 miles offshore, and I'm constantly reminded of the tragedy as the buoys marking the wreck are visible. It only happened 32 years ago off Bembridge, and 14 of the crew are still entombed in the wreck, but strangely very few people remember it." He was one of the divers who investigated the wreck for the Marine Accident Investigation Branch and the vessel's owners and insurers. And he was also second coxswain of the Bembridge lifeboat when the Flag Theophano sank in 1990. The MV Flag Theophano was a Greek-registered cement carrier on a journey from Le Havre to Southampton, carrying 3,920 tonnes of cement. Her crew were Greek, Egyptian or Maldivian nationals. Approaching the Solent on the evening of January the 29th in rough weather, the ship was told to anchor in St Helens Anchorage off the island. The last contact with the ship was at 7:32 p.m. when it was passing the Nab Tower. When the ship was called by radio the next morning and given permission to enter Southampton, there was no reply. A search was carried out, and when a lifeboat and 2 bodies were found, it was assumed the ship had sunk during the night. Eventually an oil patch was found close to the Dean Tail buoy, and the wreck was found 20 metres below the surface. When the weather had calmed, divers inspected the wreck and found the ship had settled upside down and that the cargo of cement had already started to harden.
Of the 19 dead crew, 5 of their bodies were recovered, while the remaining 14 have no known grave other than within the wreck or in the sea. 4 of the recovered bodies were returned to Greece for burial, but the remaining crew member, Ibrahim Hussein, was buried in Portsmouth after his body was found at Bracklesham Bay on February the 19th, about 3 weeks after the ship sank. A 19-year-old seaman from Kolhada in the Maldives, Ibrahim was buried in the Muslim section in Kingston Cemetery in Portsmouth. Until recently, his grave was unmarked, a fundraising effort which included members of the Southampton Shipowners Association and people involved in the search operation or the local shipping industry at the time, has paid for the headstone, which was installed by Portsmouth City Council last Friday. During this commemoration event, Martin also officially launched his book. A Marine Accident Investigation Branch inquiry found that the Flag Theophano's loss was due to capsizing in bad weather, possibly after the cargo shifted. The inquest was held at Chichester in July 1991 and returned a verdict of death by misadventure. Martin has been in the commercial diving industry since 1968 and is still actively diving, so he has made more recent visits to examine the wreck. His book gives some fascinating insights into the circumstances leading up to the sinking and what could have happened to the ship. The book is available via Amazon, priced at $7.99, as well as locally at Bembridge Lane End Co-op and at the Shipwreck Centre in Arreton.
Now we move to My View. Personal columnist Matthew Chatfield says, passing along my good name. I grew up as a clergyman's son. An excellent introduction to the world for which I remain grateful. This upbringing did offer my siblings and me quite an unusual childhood. One of the main features of it was that everybody knew my parents, and particularly my father. He was, after all, the chap who dressed up in a cassock and climbed into the pulpit on Sundays to deliver a sermon, and, perhaps more relevant to me, turned up regularly at my school and gave an assembly. You'd think that as time went on, my young classmates would have grown bored of giggling and pointing at the vicar, saying, "That's your dad." I can assure you they did not. So for the first couple of decades of my life, it was common, whenever I gave my name, for people to look quizzically and ask, "Are you by any chance related to Reverend Chatfield?" I was always gratified to say I was, not least because the social cachet of the local clergyman could be a useful thing. Even now, nearly 50 years after my parents moved away from the parish of St John's, Sandown, I am still delighted if very occasionally I meet one of the select band of parishioners who remember them and ask if I'm connected. When I eventually moved away from home, I was out in the world where few knew or cared what my parents did. There I had to make a name for myself, no longer able to rely upon the Chatfield family standing. Whether I subsequently kept up my clan's honourable name or otherwise is not for me to say. I am sure that wherever I've left a place, the name Chatfield is better known than when I arrived. As with so many island people, the time came to raise my own family, and I returned to the island. My sons are now grown up and travelling the world with success in their own careers, much to my pride. They still have roots back here, where they were raised, and although they are called Chatfield, I doubt they ever have the experience of anyone asking them if they have any connection to me. I have not yet achieved the level of fame my father once had, and I am content to accept I probably never shall. In fact, the wheel has turned, as I realised when recently I introduced myself to somebody. On hearing my name, he gave me that familiar quizzical look, and then made the association. "Are you related to that guitarist, Jack Chatfield?" he asked with excitement. I confessed I was. This was a milestone. I have come to the point where my sons are now the ones making the news, and are doing so splendidly. I've not quite finished with it yet, but I'm glad the family name is in such good hands.
And now we move on to public information. It's been a very busy summer period for our police officers and staff on the Isle of Wight, and I'm very proud of the dedicated and professional people who have stepped up to react to the seasonal increases in demand to keep people safe, in line with our local priorities. One of our priorities is tackling perpetrators of domestic abuse. We've had a number of instances in the last couple of weeks alone of perpetrators being arrested, charged, convicted or sentenced. Jonathan Eldridge, 42, was jailed for 9 years last week for a particularly nasty and violent assault on his wife. A lot of violence happens behind closed doors. It is important that we do what we can to identify this offending and give victims the strength to seek support. In a previous column, I referenced the case of 26-year-old Joshua Hunt, convicted of the newly established offence of non-fatal strangulation. This conviction was the first of its kind for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and one of the first in the entire country. Hunt was handed a suspended sentence last month, alongside a restraining order banning him from having contact with the victim in this case. Sadly, it wasn't long before he ignored this restraining order, and on Monday this week he was charged with breaching it. He admitted this in the Magistrates' Court and will be sentenced on September the 26th. Ancillary orders like these are vital to restricting individuals' opportunities to re-offend, and they give police the power to bring dangerous people straight back into custody. We will do our best to protect domestic abuse victims, and officers will keep a close eye on perpetrators who are subject to these kinds of restrictions. Drugs-related harm is another of our priorities, and we conduct a lot of intelligence gathering work in order to disrupt supply lines. As a direct result of some great work by the Isle of Wight High Harm team, 27-year-old James Rose from Shanklin was stopped by officers in Gunworth over the summer and caught with £200,000 worth of Class A drugs. That's a significant amount of drugs removed from the streets, and now Rose is serving a 5-year sentence. Hopefully, some of you will have been involved in our second Facebook Live event, which took place this week and focused on the South White team's efforts to tackle antisocial behaviour under Operation Spider. ASB, while sometimes low level, can have long-lasting impact on the community, and we urge people affected to continue to report incidents to us. And that article was written by Superintendent Jim Pegler.
Now we move on to what's on. Anyone for bridge? Can you already play bridge, or would you like to learn? Now's the perfect opportunity, thanks to the Island Bridge Club, which is open to new members and returning players. Lessons for beginners will also be available. The venue is Ryde Baptist Church, George Street, and the meetings are on Mondays and Fridays at 1:45 p.m. and Thursday mornings at 10 a.m, where it's a gentle duplicate. You can contact the club on their phone number 405 994, or they do have a website.
Here is an opportunity to learn to sing in harmony. White Harmony, the Isle of Wight's premier male barbershop chorus, is launching its latest free Learn to Sing Harmony course. The 6-week course is for all male singers aged 18 and over and is free of charge. Focusing on a different aspect of harmony singing each week, the course is run by educators who will take singers through all the steps needed to be a good harmony singer in a choir. The course runs every Thursday evening from the 15th of September to the 20th of October. It will start at 7:30 and run until 9. The venue is at Wootton Methodist Church, Station Road, Wootton Bridge. And to book your free place, you have to email eventsmanager@whiteharmony.org.uk.
Cyclists are not coming. There's a stop press to the previous article. Following the death of Her Majesty the Queen yesterday, the 6th leg of the race in Gloucestershire was cancelled. A statement from the organisers said that the 2 remaining legs were also cancelled, which is obviously includes the island.
The Isle of Wight Jazz Weekend, which is on the 15th to the 18th of September, and will feature the Leanne Carroll Trio, Sarah Dowling Quartet, Alan Barnes plus 11, O'Higgins and Luft, Karen Sharp Trio, Nigel Price Organ Quartet, It's Trad Dad, Hexagonal, Tribute to Modern Jazz Quartet, Dave Newton and Ewan Stevenson Duo, plus more, all still to be booked, and plus local fringe gigs. The tickets are on sale now, and you need to go to the website, which is iwjazzweekend.co.uk.
Isle of Wight Literary Festival. Big name authors are unveiled and tickets go on sale. Tickets are now on sale for the Isle of Wight Literary Festival, which will be celebrating its 10th anniversary. More than 45 sessions are available to book via their website, with a few more surprises to come. Based at Northwood House in Cowes, the festival offers a broad programme covering history, politics, crime mysteries, royalty, fiction, psychology and science from acclaimed authors. The festival runs from October the 6th to the 9th and opens at 2 p.m. with Jeremy Bowen, the BBC's international editor, providing his insights on the modern Middle East. Linda LaPlante, the best-selling crime writer who changed the face of television with her mould-breaking female character DCI Jane Tennyson, the main character in the iconic and award-winning Prime Suspect TV series, will be in conversation on Thursday at 6 p.m. Rory Kethlin-Jones, a technology writer and broadcaster, shares the most important story of our times: the dramatic impact of hyperconnectivity, the smartphone and social media on everything from our democracy to our employment and our health. Anglo-French writer Joanne Harris will talk to the festival's vice patron Alan Titchmarsh about her latest book, A Narrow Door. Harris is best known for her novel Chocolat, which sold over 1 million copies in the UK and was adapted for screen starring Juliette Binoche and Johnny Depp. Also on the bill are a selection of royal authors, including Ingrid Seward, Robert Hardman, Tracy Borman and Hugo Vickers. A list of more than 45 confirmed speakers can be found at the Isle of Wight Literary Festival.com website, and tickets can be purchased online. After 2 years of a digital festival because of COVID, we're so pleased to be welcoming our loyal audiences back to Northwood House to enjoy another rich and varied programme, said Festival Chair Maggie Ankers.
The new season of 8 chamber music concerts being staged by the West Wight Arts Association will get underway on Saturday, September the 17th. The first concert will be a recital by internationally acclaimed horn player Ben Goldscheider and pianist Richard Utley. On October the 15th, Ryde-based pianist James Longford will play the Steinway B grand piano belonging to West Wight Arts. Young Classical Artists Trust musicians Janine Kadisha and Noam Greenberg will perform violin and piano duets on November the 12th. Meanwhile, on December the 10th, there will be a return of the much-loved A4 Brass Quartet. The Northern Chords Ensemble will play trios for piano, violin and cello on January the 14th. On February the 11th, another Young Classical Artists Trust duo, cellist and pianist Maciej Kulakowski and Jean Selim Abdelmoula will perform. The island's star pianist Thomas Luke, winner of the keyboard section of the 2020 BBC Young Musician of the Year competition, will give a recital on March the 11th. The season will conclude on April the 15th with the Barbican String Quartet playing Jana Ek Ad Schumann. Details of all concerts and how to book are on www.westwightarts.co.uk. Season tickets for all 8 concerts are available for £100 from Jackie Warner on 755825. Tickets for individual concerts at £16, £2 for students and children are available from the website and Totland Parish Office on 756028. All concerts are in the Memorial Hall at Freshwater at 7 p.m.
And now we move to letters. Seeing is believing, says M. Battersby of Freshwater. Once in a generation improvements to St Mary's Hospital in the county press of the 2nd of September. Precisely whose generation? Mine? My children's? Their children's? Present CEO Dr. Nicky Turner was previously the Trust's lead for the island's Sustainability Transformation Plan, which many will recall had to be nationally renamed after it became widely ridiculed by the public and many NHS staff as standing for /trash and privatise. Promoted through the ranks, Dr. Turner is very gifted in talking the talk. It's actually what our Isle of Wight NHS Trust excels in. What's needed, however, are people with a proven ability to walk the walk and build rather than destroy. Sadly, such leaders are in very short supply. As for the Island NHS Trust spin in last week's county press, first glimpse of new look for St Mary's and eye operation upgrade plans for St Mary's. Seeing is believing. Perhaps the time for magniloquence is when you have something tangible to show.
We need our farmland, writes A. Draper from Thorley. Dear Editor, I read Michael Morris's letter with interest and concern. Island Soapbox, September the 2nd. Having worked in food and public health for many years, I am dismayed at the amount of agricultural land that is being taken out of production for rewilding, but also by solar farms that present an equivalent threat to our national food security. Our new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has stated that I am somebody who wants to see farmers producing food, not filling in forms, not doing red tape, not filling fields with paraphernalia like solar farms. What we want is crops, and we want livestock. Low Carbon is currently proposing a 100-acre farm on land in the West Wight east of Wilmingham Lane. This will not only take a large amount of land out of food production, but also create a huge visual blight on our beautiful island, visible from the Downs and the surrounding AONB land. As others argue, solar farms need to be built on industrial roofs, as at the Bentley factory in Crewe, not on greenfield land. We need to leave the farmland for farming.
Bravo, St Mary's, says Hans Bromwich of Cowes. I am delighted to read that St Mary's is proposing to invest in its excellent eye department. I had a cataract operation in St Mary's about 2 weeks before COVID-19 saw many elective surgeries shut down, and a second cataract operation a few weeks after restrictions were lifted. On both occasions, one couldn't have received a more efficient and professional service. Every stage was faultless, resulting in a highly successful outcome where I now no longer need to wear glasses, although many in Plessey's bowling club might say I still need glasses. A friend of mine decided to go private and had his cataract operation on the mainland. Sadly, his didn't go as well. Chatting to him, he certainly didn't go through all the very thorough pre-op stages I went through in St Mary's, but it is difficult to know whether that was the reason for his disappointing outcome. It makes huge sense to invest in St Mary's eye department, not least because good eyesight will hopefully lead to fewer hospital admissions elsewhere, where typically elderly patients have missed their footing, had a tumble and broken an arm, wrist, hip, etc.
So the media frenzy is over. We now have a Prime Minister. I find it hard to comprehend that so much coverage was given to the party election. Less than 0.04% of the population got to vote on this debacle. That is roughly 250,000 privileged few who paid to be a member of the Conservative Party who get a say who now becomes our next Prime Minister. I can understand if someone is voted in by the majority, but this is just another example of our democracy gone mad. Surely it is time that the rules changed for the sake of democracy. Meanwhile, while the spotlight has been on the contest, the nation is being hit by the cost of living crisis and people choosing to eat or heat. Maybe Boris is too busy on his farewell tour to concern himself with the real issues. Utter madness we live in.
Sandown could be a heritage gem, says Guy Eads of Sandown. Dear Editor, the problem of derelict buildings in Sandown can only be solved when the owners decide to take action to regenerate them. However, there are measures that can be used to encourage this process. These buildings are in the Sandown Town Heritage Conservation Zone, so, with proactive guidance from the Council's planning team, good design solutions can reverse dereliction to bring into existence quality modern buildings. This in turn will encourage tourism and business investment. One of the best natural environments on the island, Sandown can be regenerated as successfully as Hastings, Folkestone and Margate. In the case of the Ocean Hotel, disentangle the legal web so that this building, where Charles Darwin, Lewis Carroll and other eminent Victorians stayed, can be restored as a heritage gem in Sandown Bay. For properties owned by the Spiker family, especially the former Calvert's Savoy Hotel site, again the planners need to insist on action. It has been empty since 1996 and permission to demolish was conditional on redevelopment. This has never happened or been enforced. It should be compulsorily purchased and turned into a park or a new building to house the Isle of Wight Council's substantial, valuable and fascinating heritage collection and archives, which we all own but never see because it is always in storage. Sandown could follow the example of Hastings, Margate and Folkestone, placing a new arts and culture building at the centre of its regeneration. Finally, the Old Town Hall is a Grade 2 listed building, owned by the Isle of Wight Council itself. It has always been a public building since it was built in 1870. The Isle of Wight Council, as owners, should support initiatives from the island's voluntary and charitable sectors to regenerate this building as a community asset, as designated by the Land Registry.
Richard Quigley, the councillor for North Cowes, writes, The article on Bob Seeley MP tackling George Eustice on sewage outflows confirmed my suspicion that he had no idea what he was voting for, or indeed how big the problem was when he had a chance to make a difference. I attended a meeting with him and the CEO of Southern Water at which Bob was more concerned about writing his press release than discussing the very serious issues of sewage release into our sea. I pressed him to support the Duke of Wellington amendment on the Environmental Bill. The Duke of Wellington's element of Lord's Amendment 45 would place a new duty on sewerage undertakers in England and Wales to make improvements to their sewerage systems and demonstrate progressive reductions in the harm caused by discharge of untreated sewage. But when he had the opportunity to force time-based reductions of sewage outflow, he voted with the government to pretty much leave it up to the water companies to deal with. Even Southern Water thought the amendment was a good idea. Yet now, after a dry summer, which still saw sewage released into the sea around the island, Bob claims to care. He's even managed to tackle an environmental minister that would last less than 24 hours in the job after Bob's questions. So my question is Bob short on memory, or does he genuinely fly by the seat of his pants from one day to the next? Because from where I am standing, he has no coherent plan to improve the lot of islanders and more of a plan to improve his career. A bigger office is more of a draw than clean beaches, obviously, and let's not even ask about the island deal.
And that's the end of the letters for this week, so it's goodbye from Kate.
And goodbye from Morris. The In Touch programme follows and the scaffolding news follows that. The RNIB's Braille Library. In April 2021, the Royal National Institute of Blind People, the RNIB, announced changes to their Braille Library service. Their new system offers access to more digital copies and home delivery of books on request. However, In Touch listeners have expressed their concerns about long wait times and no longer being able to return books, leading to high levels of wastage. We invited Ailsa Fairley and Tim Pennick to share their concerns with Dave Williams, the RNIB's Customer Experience Manager. The presenter is Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, and the production coordinator is Paul Holloway.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Ask sighted people what images come into their mind when they think about blindness, and it's a pretty fair bet that those that will be right up at the top of the list are guide dogs, white canes and Braille. But increasingly Braille, the method some blind people use to read by touch and the method I'm using to read this script now, has been perceived to be under threat. Among the reasons, the growth of synthetic speech technology to read books and documents, falling numbers who learn Braille, the bulk of Braille books, which creates storage and curating problems, and a vaguer idea that somehow Braille, especially for younger people, is just not cool. So when 18 months ago the RNIB introduced what felt like radical changes to its Braille library services, including smaller multi-volume books, which rather than returning, you threw away when read, alarm bells began to ring, and they're still ringing. Listeners are telling us they want a review of how the new system is working, and they told us about some of the problems they've encountered with the new setup. Well, we'll be hearing from some of them in a moment, but I want to bring in first Dave Williams, who's the RNIB's Customer Experience Manager and also chair of the Braillists Foundation, which aims to promote Braille and its use. Dave Williams, first of all, just remind us, why was it decided that these changes were necessary?
Hello. We had a situation at RNIB where we had a large warehouse of Braille books, which frankly were decaying. Many of the books were in a poor state of disrepair. We were also getting feedback from readers that the books were quite large and difficult to handle, difficult to fit in school bags. And so during the pandemic, of course, we were all told about, the risk of transmission of the virus. So that accelerated plans to go to a Braille on-demand service. So now, as you say, books are sent out to readers. They don't need to be returned. You can keep them for as long as you like. You can, of course, share them with a friend, or you can recycle them with your other paper waste.
OK, we'll come on specifically to the issue of the kind of formatting of the books. I'm just interested, before we move to some of the consumers, how much did you actually discuss this with blind people? How much research was done to find out how this would go down?
So research had been going on for quite a long time. Talking to people at RNIB, I understand that conversations about the future of the Braille Library go back to 2017. RNIB looked around the world at what our sister organisations were doing and other Braille lending libraries, thinking about, what is the future? How can we be more sustainable? How can we actually scale up the Braille that's available for readers? And of course, with the increasing adoption of electronic Braille, how might we offer Braille that way as well?
OK. Now, one of those people who contacted us is Ailsa Fairley from Nottingham. Ailsa, before you explain the problems that you've had, just tell us what kind of a Braille reader you are and how you used to use the, both the RNIB library and the National Library Service before those changes took place.
I guess the starting point for me is I often say that learning to read Braille was the best thing the RNIB ever taught me. And before the library changed, I would describe myself as an avid reader. I still am an avid reader if I have the books. So in the old system, you could have a maximum of 6 titles, which I always had that maximum because that was the quantity of reading that I did. Reading Braille books is a major part of my lifestyle, my well-being. I actually can't put into words how important it is to me. With the new system, because I don't have access to electronic methods, I need the hard copy.
So what was it that prompted you to contact us?
Well, to start with, there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be teething problems, of course, and eventually, hallelujah, it settled down into quite a steady rhythm. I was getting 1 title a week. I was conscious of reading very, very slowly. Then, round about March, the whole thing ground to a halt. The library staff on the telephones were very helpful, informed me that it was because they had installed some sort of new computer system. I thought, after about a week it might, it'll be up and running again. But it wasn't. And it went on and on for several weeks when nothing was coming out at all. At one point, I clocked that I had books delivered on the 22nd of July. I didn't get anything again until the 17th of August. And then the next gap was through to the 2nd of September, which was just last Friday.
OK, we'll come back to some of the other issues. But Dave Williams, why has Ailsa and some other people we've heard from had this problem?
Well, firstly, Ailsa, I'm a Braille reader too, and I want to apologise because that's not the experience we would want you to have. I read the bedtime story with my son. Braille's very important to me. You heard in the introduction, I'm chair of the Brailleist Foundation. We help people get started with learning Braille. So this is absolutely, something that I think about every day, and we do need to make it better. You're right, there were IT issues. There was also a hardware failure. One of our big industrial embossers went offline for a bit, and we had several false dawns with that, with replacement parts and people who were going to fix it. We had people off with COVID. It was just a long catalogue of things which reduced our capacity significantly. We have sent out, I think, about 1,300 books since April, even with the reduced capacity. But I am glad to report that things are gradually coming back online. The embosser is fixed, and the IT issues, the software problems that you alluded to are resolved, as I understand it. So hopefully we are now back up to full strength.
I should say at this point, Dave, Ailsa is not alone, as you'll obviously understand. Susan Buckingham got in touch with us. She says,
I have a book ordered, but there's still no sign of it. I've spoken to the very nice people at the RNIB library, but it's not their problem. They can't even send me one of the old books because they have, I understand, been given away to schools, etc. Perhaps it would have been a good idea to keep some back until a new scheme was up and running efficiently. I've had a book for some time, but I've now finished reading it twice, and I feel bereft without a new book of my choosing to pick up instead.
Well, I have to say, the day after Susan emailed us, she did get a Braille book in a format she was pleased with. And Mark Taylor has recently tweeted that he's finished the Braille books the RNIB last sent him, and in an email from the RNIB, he was told, "We have a delay getting the Braille books sent out at the moment, so it'll be a few weeks before we're able to send your next book." I mean, what about that? Ailsa was assured initially that she would never be without a book. It's not happened.
It's frustrating. I absolutely agree. And I certainly wouldn't want to find myself in that situation. The service was stress tested, but actually our Braille Library membership, I'm glad to say, has increased by about 20% since we introduced the on-demand service. We didn't anticipate that increase. However, I would extend that same apology to Mark and to Susan that, obviously we don't want you to be without books. And of course, the good news now is you haven't got that maximum of 6 titles that you mentioned earlier, Ailsa, that you can keep as many books as you've got space for.
Yeah, but that's no good if you only got one book that's actually arrived. I want to ask you about that point about existing older books, because that seemed to me a fair point that Susan was making. What happened to all those older books?
So there was an opportunity for Braille Library members to request those books to keep, and I know several blind people who did that. Books were also offered to partner organisations around the world who wanted those, but they can be produced as and when they're needed, and obviously that does rely on the system working, which you're absolutely right to highlight. It hasn't been, and we're glad that it is now.
OK, so that's the nuts and bolts of the scheme and the problems that, to some extent. But someone else who got in touch with us and who also wrote to the trustees of the RNIB with his reservations is Tim Pennick. Now, Tim, you were concerned from the start about the concept and what felt to you as the loss of its function as a lending library. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Absolutely. I mean, as Dave's explained, the underlying concept is that it is no more a library. Basically, it's not possible to return books. It's not just that you don't have to, it's no longer possible to return books. So suddenly, all the old books are either destroyed or handed on to somebody else. So basically, my initial shock really was the incredible waste of paper. The new system works entirely on when you finish with a book, you stick it in the recycling. Now, even if you recycle it, we're always told that recycling is the third option. Reuse comes before recycling, and if you can, reduce comes before that. One of the problems with the system that I encountered immediately is I don't read a regular amount of Braille books. I can never know from one week to the next how many I'm going to read. The system basically was set up originally so the RNIB would have some sort of algorithm to understand how often you would need a book. If that doesn't work, you're either short of books or you've got a huge number of books all arrived at the same time. Yeah. Dave was saying just now, if you want a book, you can ask for it to be produced. But basically, it doesn't happen like that. The best you can do is if it's already on file, if the computer-readable edition of the book exists, it takes, in my experience, a couple of weeks to be run off. Under the old system, if the book existed in Braille and if it was in the library, they could stick it in the post the next day. I've got another list. List.
Well, just one more quickly, which then bring Dave Williams back on this. What about the actual formatting of the books themselves? Because you're bothered about that, aren't you?
Absolutely. Firstly, each Braille volume, as it used to exist, has now effectively been divided into 2 small pamphlets. One of the good things about them is the Braille tends to be nice and crisp. That is true. But you then have an immense number of these small pamphlets. Obviously, the idea originally was based on the idea that Braille magazines arrive as a single pamphlet or 2 pamphlets and can be slipped through the letterbox in your front door. And that's a great idea. But when you then imagine a book of, say, 28 of these little pamphlets coming through the door, they can be all over your hall. Somebody mentioned that they're actually a slipping hazard.
And you've had problems with delivery as well, haven't you?
Well, yes, absolutely. People are are saying that volumes are getting lost in the post. What really happens in effect is that the post office stick them together with elastic bands, so that you end up with either the postman bangs on the door and hands you a huge stack of these things all strapped together with a band, or they actually deliver them in plastic crates, which again they need to knock on your door to tell you they're there.
Just before I go back to Dave on this, let me just bring Ailsa in. Have you had 28 volumes of Jane Eyre coming through your letterbox?
Not Jane Eyre, but, at the moment, there's no danger of getting more than one title. But, I noticed that Dave said that, in his opinion, the library was back to normal. This morning, I was told to be cautious and it could be 2 weeks. When this decision was made, we were told, I believe I heard it on the In Touch programme, that, we would still be receiving a similar service, that there would be no shortage.
Well, Dave's apologised for the situation and has told us it's going to improve. Dave Williams, can we just talk about the formatting of these books? I saw that Jane Eyre, which used to be in 4 volumes when I was young, is now coming in at 28. Is that really the best way to do this?
Well, I think we can all agree that we want Braille to be more accessible. We want Braille that's easier to store and that's easier to kind of carry around and it's easy to handle. My nephew, who's 10 years old, I remember when he got his first Braille book and it was nearly as big as he was. And so the much smaller volumes are easier for children and for older people. And of course, alongside the hard copy, there's the sort of electronic offer as well. The library's given away hundreds of electronic Braille readers. But on the hard copy, I'm absolutely keen to hear this feedback and I understand the frustrations. Just to clarify, I don't think I said that the library was back to normal. I think I said the capacity was back up to full strength. So obviously there is going to be a backlog to get through. So it may take a little while for things to get to sort of, quotes, normal. The existing collection was always going to be constrained by, the number of volumes. And if you asked for a book that somebody else had borrowed and we only had that copied, then you would be experiencing delays in any case. So, we've taken a lot of time looking at this. I, again, reiterate, the apologies for the systemic issues we've had this year, but I'm hoping that for many years into the future, we'll have a Braille service that can grow to meet the demands of the future.
Can I just get you to answer Tim's point about the difficulty in triggering a particular request at a particular time when you want it, rather than getting a sort of drip feed of books? Do you see what he means? I
do. And I think that's part of the IT issue that Ailsa described earlier. So I think you can request specific titles now.
I mean, can you ring up and ask for a book, which is what Ailsa has done in the past. It's what I've done in the past. Can you just say, I don't want a drip feed. I want this book this week or as soon as you can deliver it to me?
Yes.
You can?
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter, can I just jump in there?
Yeah.
The lead time, as has been explained to me by the people on the help desk, even if it's working properly, is a couple of weeks. There's no way that you can just ring up and say, can I have a book tomorrow? Because basically, if you were desperate for a book under the old system, you would take the books that were available. There's no way of doing that now.
OK. I want to ask Dave Williams a broader fundamental question. The fear is being expressed, Dave, that what is actually happening here is the running down of Braille book provision because of the curation, storing and production costs. So it can be argued then that there isn't sufficient demand for Braille. What do you say to that? Because people are saying that.
Well, as you know, Braille was the reason RNIB was originally established, and the Braille library is a core part of RNIB still. So there's absolutely no suggestion that Braille is going away. Quite the opposite, in fact. We want to grow the library so that there is more choice, that there are more books available for more readers, that you haven't got a limit of 6 titles, or if the book is out of the library, you can't have it. And, we want to overcome those issues and have a Braille service that will grow and expand in the future.
But for many years now, the RNIB has been campaigning for a huge increase in the books available for blind people to read. Now, with digital developments over the last few years, for people with digital skills, that is beginning to be possible. But what about people like Ailsa, who depend on the traditional Braille book for their reading? Because the worry is for them that rather than many more books, there may be many less.
So they're happening in parallel. So as we grow the digital collection, that also benefits the hard copy collection as well. So you can have an SD card with thousands of Braille books on it, or you can choose from any of those books and have them in hard copy.
OK, well then very quickly, I want to end with Tim and Ailsa. Ailsa, first of all, what do you want to see? It's unlikely we're going to go back to where we were.
I want a sense of who's actually taking responsibility for making sure that this new system, the computer system, the supply of paper, the staples, all that stuff happens, so that I'm not in a situation where, if I'm very, very lucky, I get a book every fortnight.
OK, that's clear and to the point. And Tim Penny, I know you want to see lots of things, but what is the most important of them?
I would like to see a drains up review on where we are now and where we can get to for the benefit of the users, even if it includes maybe keeping some, saving some books that are popular at the moment, maybe some storage facilities.
Right. Tim Penny, Ailsa Fairley and Dave Williams, thank you all very much indeed. And of course, we'd like to hear your comments about how the Braille Library is operating for you. You can email intouch@bbc.co.uk and you can leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338. That's all for today from me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, our guests and studio managers Simon Highfield and Amy Brennan. Goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips news the week commencing the 12th of September. In the Newport area, the Old Mill St Cross Lane, Mill House Upper Shide Blackwater Road, 8 St James's Street, 27 Holyrood Street, 15 High Street, 35 Upper St James Street, 29 to 29A High Street.
The Ryde area, Jack's 75 Union Street, 40 Union Street at the rear in Church Lane, 86-87 High Street, 14A Cross Street, 95 to 97 George Street and 31 Castle Street.
Ryde Skips, 15 Millwood Road, The Cottage, Upper Green Road in St Helens, and 3 Arundel Close.
East Cowes Skips, 44 St David's Road.
Cowes area, Pier View, 25 High Street, 37 Cross Street and Denmark Street, and the Fountain Inn in Town Quay.
Cowes Skips, 3 Anzac Cottages, St Mary's Road, 13 Denmark Road. East Cowes, 30 to 34 Castle Street.
Sandown area, 1 St John's Road, the Pointer Inn, High Street, Newchurch.
Shanklin area, 29 to 31B Regent Street.
The Ventnor area, 91A and 91B High Street.
And Ventnor Skips, 2 Castle Road, Wroxall.